back to the Brittany Hughes Show, everybody. So Joe Biden apparently thinks that he is a shoo-in for a second term, that everybody would vote for him, that he would get the same amount of support that he got before. Joe Biden actually became irate with a reporter this week who dared to ask him what he thinks about polling showing that even Democrats want another option heading into 2024. It's very interesting to see what has happened the past week, the past couple of weeks, as even the left seems to have turned on the president that so far they had hailed as a vast improvement from Donald Trump. They had carried as much water for him as they possibly could and bent over backwards trying to make this work. And now what you see, looking down the barrel of a very tough November for Democrats and an even tougher 2024 as Biden continues this cognitive decline that we have all witnessed over the past year and a half, 2 years, even Democrats are now saying that they want another option, and polling has continued to bear that out. Of course, Joe Biden doesn't believe that. And I do think that there is an important point. There's an important question that is being missed in talking about all of this. And I'm going to bring that up in a little bit. But I wanted to talk about, first of all, sort of setting the table for this discussion and sort of looking at Biden, where he is at, and how kind of we got here. Because this polling is very interesting. But in my opinion, it's not based on anything new. Anybody could have seen this coming, should have seen this coming, and many of us did from miles and miles away. But the left just now seems to be waking up to the fact that Joe Biden is 79 years old, clearly is not at his best, seems to be declining, and the timing of this is incredibly suspect, particularly with the way that the media and the left and the Democrats are trying to skew this and sort of lay the blame on Biden and his age. So first of all, let's kind of look at this. This was a really interesting clip, I think. If you look at the way that Joe Biden responded to a reporter who asked him about this recent polling that indicates that Americans, including a majority of Democrats, don't actually want him to run for a second term. Take a look at this.
Mr. President, what's your message to Democrats who don't want you to run again?
They want me to run.
2/3 say they
Read
don't.
the polls. Read the polls, Jack. You guys are all the same. That poll showed that 92% of Democrats, if I ran, would vote for me.
A majority of Democrats say they don't want you to run again in 2024.
92% said if I did, they'd vote for me.
Okay, so I think that this by itself is very interesting. If you've ever had any experience with an older person at all, someone that is in cognitive decline, and not every 79-year-old is, some 59-year-olds are, this isn't necessarily just a symptom of age by itself. It's also a symptom of senility and a symptom of the decline in mental acuity that a lot of people start to experience as they age. And I think that's been very indicative, as we have seen throughout the past couple of years with Joe Biden. This clip and his response in and of itself, I think, just lends more credence to the theory that Joe Biden is starting to age beyond his ability to firmly grasp things. This sort of defensiveness, this sort of immediate jump to anger and, calling somebody Jack. And I think if you've ever worked with older people, if you've ever worked with people that are even not even necessarily older people, but anybody that is experiencing the first stages of Alzheimer's or dementia, which, unfortunately, I've had members of my own family who have suffered from these diseases, and they're absolutely tragic. And if you ever spend any time with people like this, what you start to notice is one of the first things that you see is a hostile aggression and a defensiveness. Whenever anybody questions anything, it's almost as if they understand that there's something going on and they understand that they're not where they should be, and they lash out immediately at anybody that even suggests that there might be something wrong. So I think his response here is really telling in and of itself. But if you look, the polls don't bear out this idea that Democrats even want Joe to run for a second term. That's not at all what the numbers show. If you look at this YouGov and Yahoo News poll just came out this week, only 18% of Americans say that Biden should seek a second term, including only about 35% of Democrats. That is incredibly concerning for Biden. There's almost no way that you can rally back from that, especially after the decline that we've seen that probably isn't going to reverse because that's not how age works. If you look at the New York Times, this poll showed that only 13% of Americans now say that the country is on the right track. 33%, a third of them, say that they give Biden a positive job approval rating, with 64% of Democratic voters saying that they want a different option heading into 2024. That's 64% of Democrats, not 64% of everybody. That's 64% of his own party that's saying that they want another option in 2024. There's one Washington Post columnist who suggested that the support for Biden would actually be higher if inflation was not constantly in the news. Now, I think that this is kind of where we sort of get into the meat of why this is coming out now. So you have two things that are incredibly true, but I don't necessarily think are mutually linked, okay? The fact that Biden is old, the fact that Biden is senile, and that he is showing more and more lapses in mental acuity, and that he is showing more and more prone to gaffes. That is 100% true, but it is also true and not necessarily immediately linked and tied to Biden's age that the country is clearly going down a wrong path. Whether you look at inflation, whether you look at gas prices, whether you look at the supply chain crisis, whether you look at immigration, whether you look at any of these issues, social justice issues, education, whether you look at any of these issues, it is very clear that the majority of Americans rightly believe that something has happened in our country where we are now headed down a path that has become very negative for them and their families. But that's not necessarily just linked to Biden's age. Okay, and this is, I think, an important distinction to make because this is something that the left is trying to link together. The fact that Americans are saying that they feel the country is going down the wrong path and they feel that they want a different option to vote for in 2024. And the fact that Joe Biden is senile and old and his age is starting to wear on him and the American public is starting to understand that. If you actually look at a lot of these polls, they don't ask the people that want a different option in 2024 whether or not that's because of Joe Biden's age. But that is sort of the link that the left is starting to draw. And it's kind of understandable, right? Because again, we've seen Biden being more and more prone to gaffes, more and more prone to missteps, and that is happening more and more frequently. Gaffes like this one, for example, where he actually said the verbal or rather nonverbal cues at the end of a teleprompter line and didn't even recognize that he wasn't supposed to say them out loud.
Percentage of women who register to vote and cast a ballot is consistently higher than the percentage of the men who do so. End of quote. Repeat the line. Women are not without electoral and or political or maybe precise, not and or political power.
Okay. Again, and I want to be kind of careful here. Because I don't like the fact that we live in a world completely based on sound bites. Really, that starts to bother me at a certain point where no matter what you say, if you make the slightest misstep, if you make the slightest gaffe, if you stumble over a word, if you misspeak, I mean, how many times a day do we all do that? That's kind of understandable, right? It sort of makes sense that you would have a verbal stumble here and there when absolutely everything that you do as president, as a politician, as a celebrity, whoever you are, if you are constantly in the view of the camera, you're going to trip up every now and then. For example, this past week, and I know it got a lot of play, Joe Biden making a gaffe about the Holocaust and saying that we are here to honor the Holocaust. Here's what he had to say in a statement where, again, he tripped over his words, and that was very obvious.
We're going to celebrate the ending of people-to-people connection and the enduring connection that binds our nations together, commemorate the history that we must never allow to repeat itself. Later today, I will once more return to the hollow ground of Yad Vashem to honor 6 million Jewish lives were stolen in the genocide, and continue, which we must do every day, continue to bear witness. To keep alive the truth and honor of the Holocaust, horror of the Holocaust, honor those we lost, so that we never, ever forget that lesson.
Okay, so what we see there, again, I think is, I don't want to even harp on him too much about ones like this. Okay, it was very clear, I think, and you can make up your own mind. If you think that that was a major misstep, I know that that's gotten a lot of press and a lot of play. And again, because it comes in a long line of Biden stumbles. It's getting to the point where the man can't even make a basic speech without having at least several of these major flubs. But to me, I'm going to give a little bit of grace for ones like this where it's pretty clear that he was trying to read a line. The word honor was on the next line of his speech, and he clearly stumbled, and I get that. I get that. I want to at least give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt to somebody that is in front of the camera all the time and kind of trips up every now and then. Okay, I don't want to harp on every kafefe, right? Things happen, right? Mistweets or misspeaks, and I get that. That's normal. The problem is what we are seeing with Biden is not normal. It is normal to have a gaffe every now and then. It is normal to have a misspeak. It is normal to say 1879 when you mean 1979, or when you're reading a speech too fast and you stumble over a word. I get that. What is not normal is saying that you were arrested with Nelson Mandela when that never happened. What's not normal is saying that you taught classes as a professor at the University of Pennsylvania when that never happened. What is not normal is running for president and repeatedly, mistakenly saying that you're running for Senate.
I have a simple proposition here. I'm here to ask you for your help. Where I come from, you don't get far unless you ask. My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other guy. Give me a look, though, okay?
What is not normal is repeatedly calling your vice president, Madam President, or mistaking her for your own wife and calling her the first lady. That is not normal. Okay, I will give grace to the little clear misspeaks, or the mispronunciations, or the slight stumbles. I get that. But what we are seeing is a long line of missteps, a long line of mistakes, not just verbal blunders, but blatant lapses in memory, recalling stories that never happened, forgetting where he is, what year it is, what office he holds. That's not normal. And in a president, that can't be acceptable. But here's the thing. This was going on way before the last couple of weeks. This was something that was going on the campaign trail in 2020. This is something that has been repeatedly happening for the past 2 years. And all of a sudden, it seems like the left is waking up. All of a sudden, it seems like now that his approval rating is tanking to the point of irredeemability, now all of a sudden, the left and the strategists, I'm not talking about just your everyday liberal walking the streets. I'm talking about the people pulling the strings. I'm talking about your Democratic strategists, your liberal media. All of a sudden, they are trying to link this age issue to the fact that the vast majority of Americans say that they don't want Biden to seek a second term. And I find that interesting because of this quote from the New York Times. So the New York Times, to their credit, actually went and asked some Biden voters how they felt about Biden running in 2024. Here's one that they quoted. Miss Ferrier, a Democrat who voted for Mr. Biden in 2020, said she had hoped he might have been able to do more to heal the nation's divisions, but now as a single mother, she is preoccupied with what she described as crippling increases in her cost of living. I went from living a comfortable lifestyle to I can't afford anything anymore, she said. Now notice here what she didn't say. She didn't say, well, I really like Biden and I appreciate everything that he's done and I think that we're on the right track and I want somebody that keeps doing exactly what he's been doing and keeps taking us down this path. I think everything's going dandy. I just think that maybe we need a younger president that might be a little bit more up to the task and doesn't seem so worn out with the job and, just might have a little more spring in his step and doesn't stumble over his words so much. Just kind of looking for somebody a little bit more spry here, but like everything that's going on, like the direction of the country, that is not what she says. What she said was, I went from living a comfortable lifestyle to I can't afford anything anymore. And to somebody like Miss Ferrier, I would say, what the crap did you think was going to happen? This is exactly what happens when you run a campaign, when you vote for someone because you don't like somebody else's mean tweets. This is exactly what happens when the fact that Orange Man Bad is preoccupying your brain space to the point where you don't actually consider the economy or policies or things that might actually affect you. This is what happens when you allow the liberal media and these rabid anti-Trump fearmongers convince you that a guy with a bad tan and a crappy haircut is so obnoxious that you need to vote for policies that are going to actually have a tangibly negative effect on your life. And that's exactly what has happened. And make no mistake, this has nothing at all to do with Biden's age. Again, this woman did not say that Biden's age is the problem. This woman is saying that her lifestyle has been detrimentally affected in the past 2 years and that is the problem. And might I remind you, Biden campaigned on these policies. His age may be catching up to him. He may be making more gaffes, but make no mistake, the policies that he campaigned on that the left promoted in 2020 are the same exact policies that he has been following for the last 2 years. If you look at the economy, he has done exactly what he said he was going to do and exactly what the left was looking for him to say he was going to do. He campaigned on left-wing big government policies to save us from ourselves. Left-wing policies to flush cash into the economy during a massive economic shutdown that was, again, promoted by the government and hailed by federal health experts and trickled down to states and localities that kept businesses shuttered. And when you pump cash into the economy via extended unemployment and stimulus checks while people aren't working, this is a recipe for inflation. And that's exactly what we started to see. This has nothing at all, at least in the beginning, to do with Putin. This was happening back at the start of Biden's presidency when gas prices started to go up and when the cost of goods and services started to go up. You cannot keep an economy shut down, pump it full of stimulus cash, and then try to turn it back on like a spigot and expect everything to go back to normal. This is what's creating the supply chain crisis. This is what gunked up the works in the beginning. And Biden came in and extended this problem ad nauseum. And we're in the mess that we're in. You add on top of that mandated COVID vaccines on people like truckers, which don't know if you know anything about the supply chain, but they're kind of an important cog in that machine. And you have federal mandates on truckers crossing international borders. And you don't think that that's going to have an effect on the supply chain and in turn on the cost of things? Of course it is. But that's exactly what Biden campaigned on. This is exactly what he said he was going to do. This is the left-wing path to answers and big government solutions that he promoted. Immigration, same exact thing. Biden campaigned on an immigration platform of open borders and halting the border wall and dismantling border security and ending programs like Title 42 that were helping hold back the tide. Here's what he had to say about literally welcoming a surge at the border back when he was not even the presidential nominee. He was standing next to Bernie Sanders during a debate, and here's what he said about immigration.
What I would do as president is several more things, because things have changed. I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
Likewise, here's what he said from his basement back during the campaign about promising not one more foot of border wall.
Trump campaigned on build that wall. Are you willing to tear that wall down?
No, there will not be another foot of wall constructed in my administration. Number one.
So again, you see over and over again, this is the platform that he campaigned on. And now more than 1.5 million illegal aliens have been caught this fiscal year alone as of the end of May. So we're not even including June and so far July's numbers. That's just from October to May. 1.5 million illegal aliens. That doesn't include the hundreds of thousands more that have been caught on camera surveillance but haven't been caught by border agents. We don't know who they are or where they went off to, and they're coming every single day. When you see videos like this one out of Texas this week showing a never-ending line of hundreds of illegal aliens streaming from the tree line in Mexico and just wandering across the river into the United States, this is exactly what Joe Biden campaigned on. This is exactly what he said he wanted. And it's exactly what the left was looking for him to say and what they wanted after spending 4 years complaining about Donald Trump and how he was a Nazi for trying to protect our borders against people who shouldn't be here, who were cutting in line, and who may in fact be dangerous criminals that need to be kept out of this country. This is where these left-wing policies get you. The war on energy, another great example. Everybody's complaining about gas prices going up, and the White House wants us to believe that this is entirely Putin's fault, that this started with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They want us to forget about the year of rising gas prices that we saw before all of that. Here's what Biden said during a debate before he was ever even the 2020 presidential nominee.
Number one, no more subsidies for fossil fuel industry. No more drilling on federal lands. No more drilling, including offshore. No ability for the oil industry to continue to drill, period. Ends.
This was a guy who was running his platform on a war on American energy independence to appease the hemp chewers and the tree huggers that want this go green agenda that puts penguins ahead of people and don't care about the human cost and sacrifice that it takes to save this planet from this fictitious boogeyman of extreme climate change. This is exactly the platform that he ran on. He campaigned on shutting down the Keystone XL pipeline on day one that would have imported Canadian oil to U.S. refineries, that would have helped us in crises like the one that we are currently seeing. He campaigned on that, and he made good on that promise. Has nothing at all to do with his age, or how many gaffes he makes, or the fact that he can't finish a freaking sentence. He's done what the left promoted. He's done exactly what he said he would do, exactly what they wanted him to do, and it so far hasn't worked. Weak on global positioning. The same exact leftist line that we saw 8 years under Obama and that we have seen repeatedly under the left, the idea that we cannot police the world, that is, we're the giant global boogeyman. We have to kind of take a back seat on the world stage, let other people sort of do whatever they want to do. And we have seen time after time after time, Joe Biden tripping physically and metaphorically on his face in front of the entire world when it comes to foreign policy. Social justice issues, same exact thing. This idea that we're not only going to protect people's right to not be, physically assaulted for simply being who we are, but we're now going to proactively promote the idea of never-ending lists of pronouns and this radical trans agenda that we're now seeing in schools that have parents, even some left-wing parents, up in arms because they don't want this garbage pushed on their children via public schools. But that is exactly what Joe Biden campaigned on, a radical left-wing push to shove LGBTQ and CRT and all of these social justice issues down our throats come hell or high water. And that's exactly what he's done through mandates like forcing public schools to open up bathrooms to any student that wants to use them, even if that means that men can now walk into girls' bathrooms. That's perfectly acceptable to them, or you're going to lose your federally provided school lunches. We are literally not going to feed public school children unless the school kowtows to this radical transgender agenda. That's exactly what he campaigned on. And that's exactly what he's done. Do you see here? For people like this woman who talked to the New York Times and the millions of other people like her who are starting to see a tangible decline in their lifestyle, in their ability to afford groceries, in their ability to pay their electric bill, in their ability to fill up their gas tank, in what they're seeing in their kids' schools, in what they're seeing in their border town. Everyone is feeling this in at least one way, if not multiple ways. And it's not because Joe Biden can't finish a sentence. As concerning as that may be, as problematic as that may be, that's the left trying to escape the culpability that they have for putting up someone that is doing exactly what they wanted him to do. And it has failed. It has failed. It has failed the American people. And now they're having to come up with answers heading into a very tough November. And they're also having to try to figure out how they're going to try to right this thing by 2024, because here's their little timing problem. If they're going to put somebody else up as the nominee in 2024, they need to start doing that now. That's not something that you do at the last minute. That's not something that somebody just jumps into and challenges him. That's not how it works against an incumbent president. If there is going to be a change, the groundwork has to start being laid now, in order to collect donations, in order to start getting the war machine up and running. That has to happen now. And the left knows that. And so in order to dodge blame for their policies being failures, Joe Biden is now going to get thrown under the bus as old and senile and unable to hold it together. And they're going to try to convince the American people that that's the reason that everything's falling apart. And if we can just elect a younger Democrat, if we can just elect a younger liberal to push these same exact failing policies, things are going to magically get better. They're not. But here's the question that I think is kind of underlying all of this that I think is really important to ask, because again, all of this may be true. It can be very true that Joe Biden is aging and that that's a problem. It can be very true that these are liberal policies that have failed. That's a problem, and that's something that we desperately need to educate people about. At the same time, I think it's worth asking if it's understood now, even to people at the New York Times, that Joe Biden is not firing on all cylinders. I think a big question at this point is who the heck is running the country? See, I'm not buying that the ship is floating and nobody's at the helm. Clearly, it's not Biden. This is a man that can't find his way off a stage, doesn't remember what year it is. This is a man that has to be fed his lines. The man gets off of Air Force One, looks at his handlers and says, what do I do next? This is a man that is clearly being guided every single step of the way, whether it's what he says or what he does or where he goes. This is someone that is being handled. So the question then becomes, who in the world is steering the ship? It's not Kamala Harris. That woman sounds like a second grader trying to read from a philosophy book. Half the time she can't find her own sentence. She sounds like Michael Scott off of The Office. So I'm not buying that she's the brains behind this masterful operation. It seems to me like a lot of these policies are doing exactly what the left wanted them to do. Or if not actually having the results, they're at least the policies that the left wanted. Open borders, big government control over the economy and all of the bull crap that comes along with that, social justice issues, all of that seems to be being pushed exactly the way that they want. So then the question becomes, if the policies are being fulfilled, but Biden's not the one doing it, who is? And that's the scariest question. I don't think the scariest question is whether or not we've got a president that knows where he is and is actually up to the task. I think the scariest question is, if he's not, who is pulling these strings? I think that is possibly the most terrifying thing about this whole entire issue. So we're going to see again. I think the American people are definitely going to have a chance to weigh in on November. And you can say what you want. At the end of the day, you can scream about abortion. You can scream about social justice. You can scream about all that stuff. What people care about is their ability to afford groceries. And I think that's going to be the ultimate issue that it's going to come down to for the vast majority of Americans. So with that, that's the Brittany Hughes Show for this week. Make sure that you go online, tune into full episodes on YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also head over to iTunes and check out our show on there. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you don't ever miss an episode. We are also on, let's see, where are we? We are on Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. I will see you back here next Thursday. Have a great weekend.